As the leading powers in the Syrian civil war are rethinking their next moves, one country that has been left relatively under the radar is Turkey. Ankara has been involved in the Syrian conflict since the beginning, but many observers are overlooking what it really is that got Turkey involved in the first place and what they are expecting to gain from the Syrian civil war. Before the demonstrations in Syria escalated into a civil war, the geopolitics was simple, and Turkey's interests were simple: prevent Iran's sphere of influence from expanding into Syria and thereby getting a direct access to the Mediterranean Sea. Now, after years of full-scale warfare, the civil war is being overshadowed by a proxy war, and things get more complicated with a proxy war. It's not just about weakening Iran anymore, but the interests of Turkey now also include preventing Kurdish separatism and the rise of Sunni jihadism. My name is Shirvan and welcome to Caspian Report. Turkey, along with France, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, is one of the countries that supported the United States to conduct a more comprehensive attack that would weaken the Syrian government. Now, although these countries are on the same side and their primary interest is shared by preventing Iran from gaining a foothold in Syria, every one of these countries also has a completely different additional interest in the outcome of the Syrian civil war. For one, Ankara doesn't actually want the complete destruction of the Syrian government. They just want to replace Bashar al-Assad with a moderate Sunni leadership, because Erdogan fully understands that the collapse of the Syrian government would only empower the jihadist fighters, just like how the collapse of the Afghan government gave rise to the rule of the Taliban. So even though Erdogan wants to see al-Assad removed from power and thereby weaken Iran's influence south of the border, he doesn't want to go as far as to dismantle the Syrian government and thereby lay the foundation of a Sunni radicalist government. But perhaps even more importantly, the dismantlement of al-Assad's government would also further encourage Kurdish separatism. If you consider the fact that Turkey has a large Kurdish minority of roughly 50 million and 70 million in the southeast of the country, then you can realize the national security risk that the Syrian conflict poses for Turkey. So the Turkish strategy is the classic divide and rule approach: turn the jihadists against the Syrian Kurds. And this is very interesting because Ankara essentially is working to bring Syria's opposition's jihadists and the secularists under one umbrella against the Kurdish opposition forces, thereby giving the opposition a more nationalist Syrian face. Now, Erdogan doesn't actually like the jihadists over the Kurds. He just sees the Kurdish movement as a larger threat to his country than the jihadists in Syria. And this has two reasons why. First, the international community is more sympathetic to the Kurdish movement for autonomy than jihadism. So, in the long run, Turkey would have more international support in fighting the jihadist elements than Kurdish rebels. Second, Turkey has a very large Kurdish minority. The spillover of Syrian Kurds would be much larger than the spillover of jihadists, of whom there are very few in Turkey. Now, Erdogan isn't the only one who has taken the Kurdish role into the equation. Al-Assad, for some time now, has been trying to approach the Syrian Kurds and forge an alliance against the Sunni jihadists. Plus, al-Assad's proposal comes at a very delicate time because Turkey and the PKK are still negotiating a peace treaty, so obviously al-Assad's intervention could derail the peace talks, and this could potentially destabilize Turkey's domestic politics. In a previous Caspian report, I explained the role the PKK plays in the internal politics of Turkish parties. So, in hopes to put pressure on Turkey and seek new alliances, al-Assad might actually grant Syrian Kurds an autonomy, like the one in Iraq, and thereby he could secure the Kurdish front. But equally important, this could lead to military assistance to al-Assad by the Iraqi Kurdish government. So we may end up seeing Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga troops engage in skirmishes against the Syrian jihadists, But one interesting side note is the position of Baghdad. Because Sunni Iraqi troops are already deployed in Syria and they are actually fighting their Shia countrymen in Syria. Now, if the Iraqi Kurds get involved, it's going to get even more complicated because we would see the continuation of the Iraqi civil war being fought in Syria. For the foreseeable future, Turkey is stuck in the geopolitics of the Syrian civil war, or I should say proxy war. But the primary interest of Ankara has shifted from containing Iran's sphere of influence to containing the civil war from spoiling over into their own borders. And to accomplish this, the Turks will have to manage a balance of power between the Sunni jihadists and the Kurdish rebels. This was a Caspian report by me, Shirvan. Let me know what you guys think on this subject, and for more information, you can visit the Facebook or Twitter pages of Caspian Report. Anyway, thank you for watching, take care, and sağ ol.